Hey everybody, Dr. Heldman here. It's Christmas, the day after Christmas, 2024. This is the second video in a series of videos that I wanted to show you about TryHackMe's Enumeration and Brute Force room. So let's get started. It should be super informative. So you'll recall that in the last movie, what we did was we went through getting OpenVPN working on Kali Linux. We were able to hit this enum.thm site so we could get in and look at things. And now we're moving on. We're going to the second section, which is authentication enumeration. Now this is pretty much straight coursework, and it's very, very good. So they're talking about identifying valid usernames. And the idea is that if you try to change a password, let's say that you type in a username that you think exists on the account, and it comes back and it says this account doesn't exist, at least you know that you're getting into the database that's keeping track of all the users, the passwords, and their accounts. If it says incorrect password, that's even better because you know that now you've hit a valid username. Now you have to just try and figure out what that user's password is. So this idea of valid usernames is pretty solid. And then you probably work for a company or have worked for a company that has very strong password policies, and so they talk about that here. Now this is what I wanted to show you. I want to talk about this a little bit because this is a pretty interesting subject. What you're looking at here is called PHP. You can see that it starts with a left angle bracket, question mark PHP, and it ends with a question mark and a right angle bracket. This is the PHP programming language, which you're going to find used predominantly on servers that are serving up web pages to people. And so the concept here is a $sign. You're declaring a variable. So we're declaring a computer variable, temporary memory variable called password. Now there's another variable here that's kept track of by the system, and that is when we're going to post information to the web server. So there are different HTML, there's get and post. These are HTML commands. What we're saying here is I want to post a password into the database so it can validate my password. And so whatever password we get from the post operation here, notice here that this is a $sign, it's a PHP variable, it's an environment variable, underscore cap POST here. So this is an environment variable PHP is using, which is keeping track of HTML post operations that are going into the database and querying the database about a user, a password, what have you. And so in this case, we're passing in the password. We assign whatever we have to this variable called password. And then we're using something very interesting here. These are called regular expressions. You'll see the term regex, R-E-G-E-X, regular expressions. It's actually pretty lengthy. There's quite a bit to regular expressions, or regex. And in this case, what we're looking at here is we've got a pattern. So it's saying start from the front here. And this first part here is saying question mark. Anytime you see this question mark, you know you're likely dealing with some sort of a PHP something or other. So a PHP command, or it's looking for data, things like that. And it's saying equals to dot star A through Z. So what that A through Z is doing is it's requiring at least one uppercase letter. So here's the caret right here, this little guy here, uppercase 6, that's called a caret. That is saying start at the beginning of whatever was passed in. Then we say it must have at least one uppercase letter. This \D here means that it must have at least one decimal. This \W underscore here is requiring at least one special character somewhere in the string. This dot plus here is ensuring that there's at least one character in the password. Of course, it's got to be a lot more. This is where you would do your length enforcement. And this $sign is assuring that there is a match at the end of this string. So this whole thing is determining if the password follows the given system password, the pattern that has been laid down for passwords. And today, I think it's probably graduated to 12 characters, but it used to be 8 characters, a mixture of upper and lowercase letters, numbers, special characters, which includes the space bar. You can put space bars in passwords. That's part of the character representation. And so this is validating that this is going to comply with whatever the organization's password requirements are. Now, they're saying we've got this thing called pregmatch here. So pregmatch is in the library of known PHP functions. And what it's doing is it's matching the pattern here that it has derived to the password that was passed into it. If those two things are equal, if they match, then we're going to say your password is valid. Otherwise, password is invalid. Now, why am I explaining this? Well, because if you're going to get into cybersecurity, ethical hacking, penetration testing, those kinds of things, code is every bit as important as understanding the actual underlying hardware or the TCP/IP protocols. It all blends together, so it's all very much system thinking. And so you'll have to know a little bit about PHP. I don't know a lot about it, but I know how to recognize it, and I know how to get into it. If I see PHP in a website, you can go in and there's ways that you can trick it. And then you can see here that there's some code that the server is running. This is called server-side code. It runs on the web server that's validating that you have an actual good password. So this happens on registration pages where you're initially registering for an account. It happens on password reset features. You can get what are called verbose errors. And what they're saying here is that a verbose error occurs during a login attempt or another interactive process which is possible to reveal too much. So what these stealthy hacker types do is they're going to try to get into a website. They see that it's running PHP, and they're trying various tricks to see if they can get more information about it. There are people that are capable of doing SQL injections that are called dark SQL injections. They don't know anything at all about the underlying database, and they kind of poke around with it and play with it. It's called fuzzing, to get to the point where they can actually get into the database. So believe it or not, there are people that have the tenacity, they have the understanding, and they have the ability to just sit there and continue banging away at this thing until they finally are able to breach it. And then data from previous security breaches is a gold mine for attackers, and it allows them to discover whether there have been compromised passwords or usernames across different platforms. So that's the next part of this class now. And so then they ask you what type of error messages can unintentionally provide attackers with confirmation of valid usernames, and it's a verbose error where we go back and back and back and back trying to find out what is it that's happening on this site, what is this site going to accept. And the idea is, largely spoken, is sanitizing of data. So web developers and regular developers that are working on these web pages, what they want to do is they want to make sure that as data is keyed in, it follows certain patterns, it obeys certain limitations, and they discard anything else. Because if a hacker finds out that they can get in on the end of a string like this, and it can be as simple in a SQL injection as just one tick mark, if they can get in that way, then they can pass in a bunch of malware because the system's just going to blindly accept it. So that's the point with what's happening here. But this section right here is important that you understand that this is PHP, and it's also using regex. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go out somewhere and find some classes on these two things. And I think that's where W3 Schools comes in. I just moved from one tab to another, so I'm at W3 Schools now. I love these guys. They don't charge for this coursework. You can get certifications through these guys. This is a really good place to go if you want to know certain things, like here is PHP, for example. And if you drag this thing over, you can see that there's a whole bunch of other stuff that they offer in terms of training. Now, how about regex? Well, I don't see a regex class here, so that's something you're probably going to have to go get a book for or go through some YouTube movies, but you definitely need to understand regex. Okay, now we go on to the next section of the course, and this is just as interesting. So they're talking now about verbose errors, the idea that the system's talking back to you. It's being very verbose, and it's giving you information. Now, this is not information Ma and Pa Kettle are going to observe. They're not that observant. That's not the point. The point is the hackers are observant, and they're seeing, okay, this is saying username not found, but that tells me then that I did hit the database. Or it might say password not correct, in which case it liked the username, but it doesn't like the password. So this is what we're talking about with verbose errors. Now, what you can do is you can find internal paths. This is very, very good for when you're trying to get into, a site of some kind, and you know where the path is now to where all the files are capped. That's the point there. So it's a hidden treasure. It really is true. It's a map leading you to hidden treasure. Then you can get the database details. You can actually maybe even get the schema. But even if you can't get that, you can get secrets about the table names and the column details. So in RDBMS systems, the way that it works is very much like Excel or like Google Sheets. If you think about those, you've got a Google Sheets or an Excel document, and at the very top, along the first row, you have the column names. So columns go vertically, rows go horizontally. So the very top row is going to be your column names. It's the same in a database table. The very top row contains the column names. Those can be very juicy because the column name might contain data that you're really after, like social security number, for example. And so if you know the names of the tables and you know the column names, you are really getting to the point where you know the schema of the database. So that's a pretty cool thing. Now, verbose errors can involve invalid logon attempts. So you can try to log on to somebody and see where you can get. You could do a SQL injection. And I said before that even a single tick, like you might type in the username and you're getting places, you're going somewhere with this, it's getting you where you need to go. Now you find out you can get in, you put in a tick, and then you put in your malware. We'll talk about that more when we get to SQL injections. But it's very possible to do a SQL injection, and once you get in and once you find out that you have a verbose error, it's possible for you to get in. You can do file inclusion, meaning you can include a file inside your request to the database, or you could do path traversal. This is what path traversal looks like. .. .. What that means is go up one directory, go to the root, go up one directory, go to the root. So it's saying traverse this directory system and let's see if we can figure out where we're at. You can manipulate a form so that it does something different than what you thought it was, what they had intended for it to do. And you can do what's called fuzzing. So what fuzzing is you're sending in unexpected inputs to various parts of the application to see how it reacts. There are entire books on fuzzing alone. And there are fuzzing tools inside Kali Linux that you can use to get more details about something that you're looking at. And then there's user enumeration, where you're trying to discover the usernames. This is very, very key, especially powerhouse usernames like administrators, database administrators, people like that. That's a good thing to get. And then you can exploit these errors, which will eliminate aspects like password policies, a thing called account lockout mechanisms. I do it 3 times and it locks me out, and I've got to call the help desk to get admitted back in. And you could do brute force strategies that way. And they give you some examples here. These are really, really good examples. These guys have really upped the game in terms of how they're demonstrating this coursework. I love the revisions they've made to this. So they're saying log in to view your dashboard right here. Welcome to Volnap. Log in to view your dashboard. So you try something completely random, and it comes back and says right here, email does not exist. It's hard to see that white on that red there. Email does not exist. Well, what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that you pinged a database, you pinged a user table, and it said, I don't know that username. So that's good. That means there's a database out there responding to you. That's the point. Then it says, okay, I'm going to go ahead, log in. I log in, and this one says invalid password. And so now you know, okay, now like that username, now all I've got to do is hack the password. That's the point. Now here's the second part, and this is really super interesting. What's going to happen here is they want you to create a script. So there's two parts that are happening on this particular section here. They're showing you some Python code here. And what they want you to do is they want you to download this Python code, save it off as script.py, and then run it. And you're going to run it in a fictitious environment. So you're not going to run it like on the web. This is something that you're doing to just test locally, like in Kali Linux. Or if you had started the attack box in Try Hack Me, you would run it here. Let's go over this Python code real quickly. And then the last part is I'll show you how you can run this thing. So when you see the word, first of all, import means we're going to import some libraries. So it's going to import a library called requests and one called sys. These are built-in libraries in the Python language infrastructure. The define means that we're going to define a function, and the function is called checkmail, and it gets one argument. It gets an email address. Then it says my URL is going to be this. So this is the phony URL we've been using throughout the Try Hack Me coursework, and that's where the login function is going to exist. So we're going to find that when we're working in the attack box, or if we're working on our machine that's connected via OVPN, we're going to find that this labs verbose login functions PHP exists. And then we have some headers here. Now the headers are interesting. So this is a Python dictionary. So you see a left curly and a right curly here. They're called curly braces. Inside a left curly and a right curly brace, you have a dictionary. Left and right curlies denote a Python dictionary. And these are key value pairs. So we're saying we've got a key here called host, and its value is enum THM. We've got a user agent. This is the browser that we're using. And we've got these other terms here that we're defining. And these are all part of a Python dictionary called headers. We have another dictionary in here called data. And so the data consists of a key called username and the email. This is a variable. So we're picking up whatever variable we put in here. Password gets password, and the function gets login. Then there's what's called the response. So we are going to do a post with the URL, headers, data, and we're going to return response.json. So this thing is doing a couple of different things here. We've got some Python happening here. And then we invoke some JavaScript object notation here, response.json. JSON's very cool. This is going to be yet another thing that you're probably going to want to dig into. Try W3 Schools. Let's see if they offer JSON here. Query this and find out if they offer any JSON tutorial. There you go, JavaScript JSON. Okay. So we've got that, and what we're doing is we're invoking JSON. JSON's very cool. I like JSON a lot. What JSON has the ability to do is to get into web pages or things like this and do something about it. So JSON is very, very helpful in this particular aspect, and we're going to return some response. We've got another function here called enumerate emails. That's going to be the entire file that we generate. So we start out with an empty list. If we don't find any emails, we say it doesn't exist. But, and this is Python code again, with open. So what that's doing is that is taking and opening up an email, a file full of email addresses in read-only. That R means read-only. and then it's just going to go through and parse all of these different emails, and then it's going to return any valid emails. And then finally, we've got this section down here, if dunder name equals dunder main. There's an entire thing on why Python uses this particular vernacular. And I'll leave you to do that to research, but this is super important. So this is Python code. What we're going to do then is, what I do is I take and I copy all this code. So I'm just going to grab it and drag and drop clear down here. I'm going to grab all of this code. I'm going to copy it, put it into the copy buffer, and then I'm going to go out to Kali and paste it in place. Okay, so here I am in Kali, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use a command called touch, and I'm going to call this script.py. What that'll do is touch creates an empty file, and so I hit enter, and if I do an ls, it's sitting out there. And now I'm going to nano that thing, nano script.py, and I'm just going to paste that code into place, that Python code, and here it is. And we've been through the Python a little bit, so you can go back through it and look at it if you want. This star up here on nano means that this file has not been saved yet, so what you do is you do a Control-O. Remember that nano, this symbol here is the control key. So when I'm in nano and I see this caret symbol, it means Control-O. So I'm just going to do a Control-O to write out and hit enter, and a Control-X to escape. So I've got that. Next thing, we jump back to TryHackMe because we want to go out to a particular library and download some files. But I'm going to do that from within Kali, but I need to know where to go to find those files. What we're doing is we're getting common Gmail email addresses. We're going to brute force this thing and find out if we have a valid password, a valid email. So let's go take a look at that. All right, so where they want us to go is they want us to find this thing here, nyxgeek, and then we're looking for username lists. So let's go back to Kali and see if we can find that. So I'll go to Kali, and I'm going to bring up Firefox right here, and I will look for nyxgeek username tac lists, like this. Should take me to this person's GitHub site. Let's see, there it is, top 100, yep, New York Geek List. So that's the one we want, so I click that. The one that I actually want here is this username's gmail.com. So I'll select that guy, and then what I'll do is I will download that. Click the ellipsis button, download it. And it's going to put it into usernamesgmail.com.txt, but it happens to be inside the downloads folder. I'm going to use just the Kali Linux file manager here. I find it to be a little bit easier for stuff like this. So I'm going to go to Kali, downloads right here, and then there's this file, this Gmail file. I'm going to right click and cut it, and I'm going to move it to Kali, THM, EBF, and paste it right in there. So I will paste that file right there. So that's something that I normally do using the Kali file manager rather than using command line, although command line would work just fine. And you could double click this to open the text file if you wanted, and you can see all the common email addresses that are out there. So we've got that. So now if I minimize this and I take a look, ls, at what I have in here, I've got the script and the username's gmail.com. I go back to TryHackMe. So the concept here is I've downloaded this Python script file. I went out to this GitHub site to download common Gmail usernames, email addresses, and now I'm going to invoke this command here. So what I'm going to do is right click that and Control C to copy it and go back to Kali here. So I'm going to right click and paste the clipboard and take a look at it. Now there's a couple of things I want you to know about with regard to Kali. Python comes enabled on Kali already. There's a Python version 2, there's a Python version 3. I think we're going to see a Python version 4 pretty quickly because, it keeps evolving. And what this is doing is this is invoking Python version 3, and it's saying I want you to run script.py, which we have locally here, and I want you to use usernames_gmail.com.text as the fill-in for this, and let's see if we run into any problems. However, before you can invoke this script, it's not going to work because it is trying to work against this enum THM file here. So what you'll need to do is go ahead and start the machine going here. So you start the machine, and once that is done starting, I'm going to wait just a few minutes because it takes a couple of minutes for this thing to come up. What you're looking for is it takes, 1 minute, and it's going to show me the IP address. So I started this movie again after a day or two after Christmas. So it's having to restart this machine. So that's fine. Then what we have to do is we have to go into Kali and we have to set it up so that OVPN is working fine. And then what we can do is we can run that script. So I'll come back to you in just a minute. Once I have this IP address, we'll go check that out and we'll see if the script runs. Now when you restart the machine again of a day, you're going to have to check this IP address because it's probably new, and it looks to me like it's new from the one I had before. So I'm going to copy this address to the clipboard. I'm going to run over here to Kali Linux. I'm going to grab a command prompt here, clear the screen, and I'm going to check my IP addresses. So I'm going to cat/etsy/hosts to see what's in there. And it is a little different address here. So what I have to do is edit that file with the new address. So I'll sudo nano/etsy/hosts. I'll go in there and get rid of this address like so. Right click and paste it in from the clipboard here. That's my new address. Control O and enter to save. Control X to exit. Clear the screen. The next thing that I want to do is I want to invoke OpenVPN here. And of course, here's how we do that. We type in sudo OpenVPN, and I've already got that saved. So it's pointing to //home Kali desktop Bill Heldman OVPN. Here it is right here. There's that file right there. So I hit enter, and this is going. That's actually very, very good. It means I've connected to TryHackMe. I'm into their site. I can minimize this. Now what I can do is go grab another prompt, change into the TryHackMe folder, TryHackMe EBF, and clear the screen, do an ls. It's all sitting out there. So I'm going to do script.py. Excuse me, I forgot the Python 3. So I'm going to invoke Python 3 space script.py usernames _gmail.text. So now we've got everything going. We've got TryHackMe hooked to my local Kali computer. I'm using OpenVPN to connect to TryHackMe right now. I've got it for an hour. I'm going to have to keep an eye on that because if I go over an hour, what I have to do, if I'm getting ready to go over an hour, I have to go out there and refresh it and have it give me another hour. I'm going to start this thing running. Now this thing takes quite a little while to run. So you're going to hit enter, and you're going to start seeing it go through this list and parse through this list. And it's going to say invalid, invalid, invalid. There's only one valid entry, and I'm going to leave that up to you to find. But once you find that entry, what's going to happen is you will come back to TryHackMe here. Let me go back here and spin the email address here, and then click submit, and you're going to get a flag. And that means that you have captured the flag for this particular assignment. Okay, I went a little long here. I wanted to take the time to explain the code that's happening here, what's going on. so that you feel more comfortable going down through this class. And I find that understanding the basics of where these guys were thinking when they built this class and how this technology assembles itself together to allow you to go to a specific point is very, very good. So that's why I wanted to make this movie, to explain to you what these guys are trying to get you to do. They are super good. I think this classwork is super good. They've done a great job maintaining this site. Hats off to TryHackMe. I'm just trying to buttress what you might be looking at here if you're confused about something that you're seeing and it's like, oh, that's not something I recognize. So I hope you enjoyed this movie. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for commenting, telling your friends about this. I'm trying to grow the channel, and your efforts really, really help me, and I appreciate it. So you know what? Again, happy holidays. We're not quite up to New Year's yet, so happy holidays to you. I hope you had wonderful holidays in the past, and I will talk to you in the next video.